What's up everyone? Finally, I got my hands on the iPhone XR. I didn't do an unboxing video or anything like that. I feel like there's so many of them. So I'm pretty sure you guys already know what's in the box. But right now we are going to take a look at the iPhone X and compare it to the iPhone XR. I'm going to do speed comparison and all that stuff too. But I kind of want to go over the specs. And since I already have it in the hands and I kind of want to show you guys what it is to feel like, especially comparing these two. I've had the iPhone X as a daily driver for a long time. At least like 3-4 months. Not a really long time, but not like years. But for a little bit of time. And I just cleaned this off. And I just got the iPhone XR today. I got the coral blue one. I kind of like it. But I found already one fatal thing wrong with the iPhone XR from like owning it for 25 seconds. And it actually has to do with the body. And I'm pretty sure obviously it's a hardware thing. And I might make a whole separate video about it. But the power button actually is like, when you click it in, there's like an audible noise. It sounds like a huge click. It's like, I don't know if I can... I try to put it next to the mic to see if you guys can hear it, but it's like a little click. And I was thinking like, okay, maybe it's just like all iPhones have it. But I checked the iPhone X, the regular one, and I hear no noise with it. And I checked both my iPhone 8 Plus and iPhone 8, and I couldn't hear that either. So within the last year, both of these models, this is the only iPhone that has that kind of problem with it. I'm pretty sure this could just be my unit, but I wanted to address it here. I'm probably going to make a separate video talking about it, but it's kind of weird. Like I literally just bought it like not even like 2 hours ago, and it's already making like a noise. There's already like, and I checked my iPhone 5S and that also sounded exactly like this, but that's like a 5-year-old device. This is just bought, so it shouldn't already be making that noise. In the power button, like, it doesn't feel like it's wobbly, but I can hear that noise and it's just weird without clicking it in, so that's weird. Now another thing I want to mention briefly, obviously going around the body, is the way they feel. Okay, the iPhone X definitely feels 100% more premium than the iPhone XR. And you might say, okay, well, both phones have glass on the back and everything, but not even looking at them, you can easily tell that the iPhone XR doesn't feel as good. It also doesn't look as sharp either. And I'm going to go more in depth with the screen in a second. But looking around, I mean, we have pretty much the same exact layout. It's just, I think the chastity on the iPhone XR, especially around the body, as you can see, like around the power button and everything, it just feels way more premium and way more just better and glossy on the iPhone X, which some people might like, some people won't like. The iPhone XR chassis reminds me a lot of the iPhone 6 and 6S. Even the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus have a little bit better feeling of a chassis than the iPhone XR. And the iPhone XR is noticeably thicker as well. I think it's thicker than the iPhone XS Max as well. So that's pretty interesting. And it's especially, you know, thicker than the iPhone X. But, you know, as I say, there's nothing wrong with a little bit of thickness. You know, shout out to all my thick men and women out there. But I'll definitely say the iPhone X, not only is it more expensive and everything, but it also feels more premium. But honestly, the cost of these aren't really that much different, so I'll go into some more about that in a second. Now another interesting thing between these two is I honestly thought that the iPhone XR was going to be a little bit better at water and dust resistance, but they're actually rated the same. They're both IP67 dust and water resistant, so you can dip it up to 1 meter for 30 minutes and you'll be set. So that's kind of interesting. Now that kind of covers the basis. You know, obviously the iPhone XR is a little bit bigger. It has a 6.1 inch screen where the iPhone X has a 5.8 inch screen. And a lot of people are just kind of brushed over this, but when I looked at the iPhone XR in the Apple Store, I didn't think it was that bad. You know, I gave it a lot of flack. I didn't really think it was that bad, I'll be honest. But then I brought it here and I started looking at it and I started using it, and immediately I took out my iPhone X and I looked at it and I'm like, yeah, dude, the iPhone XR panel is definitely not as good. It's not that good of a panel if I'm being honest. And I compared the iPhone XR panel to the iPhone 8 Plus as well, and I noticed it's not even that good either. It's definitely not as sharp, you know, and from a distance, like from this distance, you probably can't even tell. But once I zoom in, you will definitely be able to 100% tell. Now it might be a little bit blurry, but I don't even need to zoom in that much. You know, you'll be able to see that it's definitely not as sharp. It looks a little bit washed out on the iPhone XR, which isn't, you know, that bad of a thing. But I mean, if you're paying that much, $750, which isn't that cheap, it's not that cheap of a price, but you should expect something of higher quality. And they could have put an AMOLED panel on this, man. Even at 750p or whatever it is, they could have easily put a panel on this. They should have, or 828p, because that's what this resolution is. There's really no easy way to do this, but I mean, you can kind of see a little bit how much sharper it is on the iPhone X than it is on the iPhone XR. I did focus in on the screen on the iPhone XR, which is on the right. And I mean, it's not 100%. I mean, this isn't like that good of a test, but Apple does a really clever thing. When I went to the Apple Store, and they do this on purpose, but there's a bigger reason behind it. They actually put all the iPhone XRs together. They put all the iPhone XS and XS Maxes together, all these things, but they actually put the XS and XS Max next to each other, but I didn't see them put an iPhone XR next to the iPhone XS and XS Max when I was at the store. Maybe they'll do it later, and maybe they do it at your region, but in mine, they didn't do that. So what I'm assuming is that most people at that store, they're just going to pick up an iPhone XR, look at the screen, and be like, oh, it's, you know, it's a good panel. And because they're wired in, they can't actually go take it to the iPhone XS Max and XS and compare the screens. So they'll be like, you know, it's good. Like, and honestly, like I said at the Apple store, it looked fine. Like, it didn't look that bad. And honestly, it's not horrible. It's a phone, you can use it, but I would have expected more from a panel of this size, especially when you compare it to an iPhone 10 panel, a Super AMOLED panel clocked over 1080p. I mean, that's a very good panel, and the pixels per inch is higher on the iPhone 10 than the 10R. Now, I can go on and on about this, but you definitely have the bigger advantage and a much better screen on the iPhone 10 than on the iPhone 10R. And another thing you're missing on the iPhone 10R is Force Touch, you know. And at first I was like, you know, they showcased at the Apple keynote, like, oh, you know, they have haptic feedback, so if you hold things like the flashlight or whatever, you can, you know, instead of force touching on it, you can get access on it or whatever. And yes, that is true, but things like peek and pop, if you get a notification on your iPhone 10R, you can't actually like go peek and pop into it or reply here. You actually would have to go through iMessage and reply through iMessage. Now, there might be a way in the future to allow you to do that, but that is kind of an annoyance, you know. And things like if you want to force touch into an app, you cannot do that on the iPhone 10R. If you hold it down, you actually just get into the deletion thing. And it really helps you out if you want to get into settings or something like that, like you want to get into Bluetooth or Wi-Fi. You cannot do that unless going into it and then going into Bluetooth and Wi-Fi here. But on the iPhone 10, you're able to force touch into it and get Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, whatever you want to. That's a kind of a minor thing, but it is kind of a big deal. There's kind of a broader thing with that. I feel like this phone, if they had the software, if they had the hardware to put in Force Touch, they should have just done it. They did it at the $699 price tag that the iPhone 8 came in, so that is kind of a difference there. I don't really like it, and that's just like one more reason why the iPhone 10 is a better phone. Now, in terms of software, this is a way the iPhone 10R is going to win. It's going to get one more version of iOS than the iPhone 10 is. Well, it should be, but in my opinion, I think the iPhone 10 might get an extra year of support like what the iPhone 5S did. So technically speaking, this phone is going to last you many, many years. I don't even know what version it's going to stop at, but I could say the same thing about the iPhone 10 as well. I think both phones are going to last a while. Obviously, on paper, the iPhone 10R should last longer, but the specs between them are actually pretty similar, you know? And I'll talk more about the specs in a second, but I will say software-wise, you should technically last longer on the iPhone 10R, but I could see Apple extending the iPhone 10 year a little bit longer, so you could get iOS whatever the last version of iOS the iPhone 10R is going to get, possibly on the iPhone 10 you'll get to, but that's kind of up in the air at this point. We're really far away from that point, but it is kind of important to note that. And just because the iPhone 10 started off on iOS 11.1.1, it didn't necessarily start on iOS 11 like the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus did, so that is kind of interesting to note. Now, in terms of the specs inside, on the iPhone 10, we had the Apple A11 Bionic chip, a hexa-core CPU, and 3 GB of RAM. With the iPhone 10R, we have an Apple A12 Bionic chip, a hexa-core processor as well, and 3 GB of RAM as well. So really, there's a lot of similarities here, you know. It's not like one's going to probably blow the other one out of the water. And the one thing I want to say before I do a speed comparison and speed test is that the iPhone 10R does have a lower resolution screen, and it doesn't necessarily have as many pixels to push on the screen than on the iPhone 10. So I could see the iPhone 10R being faster even in that case if they had the same specs. Obviously, the iPhone 10R is newer, and even though it's not as premium feeling as the iPhone 10, I do feel like the 10R is going to be faster. So I'm going to go ahead, update the iPhone 10R to the newest version it can get, which I think is 12.0.1. Yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and update this phone, and then I'm going to do speed comparison, so they're pretty much on the same thing, and we'll pretty much go from there. Alright, so I kind of had to switch up a little bit. I tried to run a benchmark on the iPhone 10R. For some reason, every time I do it, it crashes the app. So we're just going to not even do it. So pretty much what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up some of the stock apps. So like the camera, the settings, whatever. And then we're going to go into, and I know a lot of you guys were going to go complain because I was going to open up apps that I already had on the iPhone 10. But I knew you guys were going to say, oh, the cache in the back and this and that. So what I did was I just downloaded these exact same apps on both these phones. I have not opened them on either of these phones. So we're going to go straight from a fresh start. If you had these phones, if you bought the iPhone 10 or 10R, which one's going to open up the speed or the apps faster? So that is pretty much what we're going to do. So let's start off doing something like the camera. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, it looked pretty much even. Like all these apps are going to be pretty much the same, I'll be honest. Let's do the App Store. 3, 2, 1. And the iPhone 10R was a little bit faster there, as you saw. This one's still loading. No, I'm not too sure what happened. I'm going to go ahead and just rerun that, actually, because sometimes you never know, something in the back end could be changed. Let's do the App Store again. 3, 2, 1. Again, the iPhone 10R was a little bit faster, but not as fast on the second round as you guys saw. Let's go and do music. 3, 2, 1. Oh, I look like the iPhone 10 was faster there by a little bit. Now let's go to the greatest website in the world, flawlessphone.com. 3, 2, 1. And I think the iPhone 10 is going to load up faster because I've already loaded up. As you can see, it's already onto the page. The iPhone 10R shortly after. But it is a little bit different here because I've already been on both these websites. But I was already on the iPhone 10R as well, so I'm not too sure what happened there. So that's pretty much the stock apps. I mean, you're not going to notice that much of a difference. Let's go into these bigger apps now. Let's start off with TikTok, the most meme thing right now. 3, 2, 1. And the iPhone XR was actually faster there, as you guys saw. Okay, agree, whatever. All right, I had to hop out of that. I didn't want to get a copyright strike. Let's go ahead and do Netflix. 3, 2, 1. And the iPhone XR was actually a little bit faster there too. So kind of interesting. Don't allow, don't allow. Okay, swipe out. Dropbox, 3, 2, 1. I had them flipped, so it was so confusing. And I think the iPhone XR was just a little bit faster there again. So not by a lot, but just by like a hair pretty much. Let's do Quizlet, 3, 2, 1. If you guys, this is a great app if you're a student or if you want to cheat or something like that. Just kidding, don't cheat. Don't ever cheat. That was pretty much the same again. It wasn't really that big of a difference. Let's do Slices, 3, 2, 1. And I've never used any of these apps before on both of these phones. And you can see that the iPhone XR was actually able to get into that little thing faster. So it is kind of an advantage there. Let's do Bank of America, 3, 2, 1. I figured these were like everyday apps that people would open. As you can see, the iPhone XR was faster there too. So kind of interesting. Was not expecting it to be that fast that often pretty much. I mean, it's not too much faster, but whatever. Reddit, 3, 2, 1. Basically what I'm saying is it's not that much faster, but it is noticeable. As you saw, the iPhone X was faster here by a lot actually. This one was kind of hanging up a little bit. I'm not too sure what happened there. As I said, I've not used any of these apps before on these phones. Let's do this one. I don't know what it's called. 3, 2, 1. And the iPhone X was faster there. Kind of interesting. Was not expecting that. So let's go ahead and do the next one. 3, 2, 1. And it seems to be, well, it hasn't even loaded yet. Oh, they're almost the same. Yeah, they're almost the same. I think this one got into the iPhone X got into the Game Center thing faster, but literally not by much. It was like almost the same exact thing. Let's do this one. 3, 2, 1. And even from an angle that I'm at right now, I can still, okay, the iPhone XR was actually faster. But even at this angle, I can definitely see that the iPhone X screen is much sharper than the iPhone XR screen. Let's go ahead and do the next one. 3, 2, 1. And it seems to, okay, iPhone XR was faster there. I was not expecting it to be that much faster. I mean, it seems like it's really hit or miss, but more times it seems like the iPhone XR is a little bit faster at opening these apps. Let's do the next one. 3, 2, 1. Okay, again, the iPhone XR was faster yet again on the whatever game we just played. And these aren't even that intensive of games. These are pretty basic games, I would say. Let's go ahead and do this one. 3, 2, 1. I used to play this game all the time, by the way. Okay, the iPhone XR again is faster. That's pretty surprising, I guess the Apple A12 Bionic chip is much faster. Let's do the Asphalt 9. This is a pretty big game, so let's see how these run. 3, 2, 1. So I think the iPhone XR is faster as well. Yeah, the iPhone XR was able to get into the thing faster, which is pretty surprising. I was not expecting that, and here you're typing whatever, but yeah, I think as a whole, the iPhone XR is actually a faster device, which was expected, like I said, because you have like a lower resolution screen and all that stuff, which is pretty crazy. So in terms of speed, yes, the iPhone XR is faster, but it's like not going to be that much faster in my opinion. But that has been the speed comparison, so let's go back to the rest. So moving on, the battery on my microphone actually died, but now I have to go to my Blue Yeti mic. But moving to the cameras now, this is where it's kind of weird, okay? There's a lot of software differences, but there's also hardware differences as well. The iPhone XR has a single camera, the iPhone X has a dual camera setup. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, well, the iPhone XR can still do everything the iPhone X can and all this stuff, portrait mode. And that is true, but I did find that software-wise, the iPhone XR is missing a couple things within portrait mode that the iPhone X has, such as a lot of the lighting situations. Now, these things can be added with later versions, but probably since they didn't add it now, they probably won't add it later. But strangely enough, you're still able to shoot in the same video resolution, so 4K at up to 60 frames per second and 1080p at up to 240 frames per second, so that's pretty cool. You can do that on both. Now, I will say as a whole, quite possibly the iPhone X camera is better. Now, these things are super close, I'm not gonna lie, and the photos that I took, I mean, you would have to probably zoom in a lot further in order to even tell a difference. And like I say, my camera levels, my photography levels, they're really low. Like, I don't really expect too much from a camera. I don't use my camera that much on my phone. I use my DSLR. So what I'll say is the iPhone XR camera better? Maybe, it might be, it might not be. I don't think it is from my photos that I took and from my opinion of it. I think both cameras are definitely respectable. I mean, you're able to do 2x zoom into a photo, than what you can on the iPhone XR, and that's a pretty big thing too. So if it was just software, if they were both single cameras, it'd be like, okay, whatever. But since the iPhone X does have the extra sensor, the extra 12 megapixel sensor on the back, you're able to do just that much more with it. And that's why I kind of go with that phone and that camera over the iPhone XR, even though it might be better, even though Apple said it was supposed to be better than whatever we have now, or what we had then. I don't know. I don't really buy it. If anything, even if the image quality is still the same on both of them, I would still give the edge to the iPhone X, just because you have more portrait mode settings, and you do have portrait mode that you can do on things like dogs and stuff, where you can only do portrait mode on humans on the iPhone XR, which is super weird. But it is what it is. And the front camera is 7 megapixels on both too. Now, one strange thing is that the iPhone XR is able to shoot 1080p at up to 60 frames per second, where you can only do 1080p at up to 30 frames per second on the front camera on the iPhone X. So that definitely has the advantage there. But other than that, I would still probably say the iPhone X's camera is overall better, but the iPhone XR does have the advantage with the front-facing camera. Now, one of the strangest aspects of the iPhone XR is definitely the battery, and it's actually something that I praise the iPhone XR for. Going from an iPhone X to a XR, you will actually get a bigger battery. So you had a 2,716 mAh battery on the iPhone X, where now you have a 2,942 mAh battery on the iPhone XR. So you kind of have to keep this huge thing in mind. Not only do you get a bigger battery, some people might say, oh, it's more powerful, it's a bigger screen, so it's going to be less quality, whatever. The battery life on the iPhone XR is going to be better than what you're getting on the iPhone X because of multiple reasons, not only because of a new optimized chip, all that stuff, but mostly because A, it's a bigger battery, and phone manufacturers, including Apple, need to keep putting bigger batteries in their phones and not decreasing it, like they did with the iPhone XS, and they did with the iPhone 8 Plus and the iPhone 8, and numerous other phones, not just Apple, but Samsung and all these other people. But another thing is that the phone screen is actually not clocked that high. It's like 326 ppi. But on top of that, I mean, it's like 828p or whatever it is. Like, it's not that high resolution screen, way less than 1080p. So not only do you get a bigger battery, but you also get not as good of a screen. So there's less pixels to push and everything. So overall, that means you're going to get a better battery life experience on the iPhone XR than on the iPhone X. Now, is it going to be crazy amounts? No, I mean, you might be able to get like maybe like an hour extra of usage, but just know that as a whole, the battery life is definitely better on the iPhone XR. Now, you also get Qi wireless charging on both of them, so you can go drop both of them on a wireless charger and be set. Now, this is where this whole comparison comes down. Okay, we just saw that the iPhone XR is pretty much faster than the iPhone X in every single way in the speed test and everything. There were some cases the iPhone X was faster, but as a whole, I would probably give the advantage to the iPhone XR. As a whole, you might think, okay, well, the iPhone XR is a better phone, better battery life, all this stuff. But as of this point, you can't just brush over the fact that the iPhone XR doesn't feel that good. You know, in my hands, it doesn't feel that premium. I know there's glass on the back or whatever, but it feels even cheaper than an iPhone 8 Plus, which is so weird because I thought they would feel somewhat similar, but I think it has everything to do with the chassis. It's like if the iPhone 6s Plus had a glass back, that's kind of what the iPhone XR feels like. The iPhone X feels way more premium in the hands, and I think the screen is one of those things where if you're coming from like an iPhone 6 or 6s or even an iPhone 8, you will definitely say that this is a big step up and you probably won't notice a difference. But if you're coming from something like an iPhone X, which a lot of people might be thinking of, I will say that it's almost like a downgrade. Speed, performance, yes, it's better. You honestly, I mean, it is thicker overall, which is kind of funny, which I already said. The screen, I complained about it before, and a lot of people said, wait until you get it, and I got it now, and I still don't think it's that good. I mean, you can visibly tell if you hold it from a distance, not so much, but if you're holding it like even pretty decently to your face, I mean, you're going to be able to tell. But that's only if you're comparing them side by side. If you're coming from an iPhone 8 or iPhone 6, the panel is not going to be that big of a deal, but to me, it is what it is. It just doesn't feel as premium, which it shouldn't, but it's still pretty expensive. I mean, I paid for the base price $800, almost like $799 with tax and everything for a 64 gigabyte variant. It's actually $749, but they had to put in tax and everything, so it almost went up to $800. That's a lot of money for a phone, and you can get an iPhone X for like $600 now on eBay or Amazon or whatever. And if it was between an iPhone XR and an iPhone X and they were the same price, I would 100% choose an iPhone X. You get an AMOLED screen, you get better cameras, kind of. You get a better feeling phone, and that's really all you want. I mean, I still think the iPhone X is definitely an amazing phone. In a lot of ways, I think the iPhone X is better than the iPhone XR. But that is my opinion. I know I'm not 100% perfect all the time. I know you've seen a lot of reviews and a lot of people saying the iPhone XR is amazing and this and that, and it's not a horrible phone, but comparing to what we had even last year, it's not that much of an upgrade, if any. I mean, even the iPhone 8 Plus, which was just $40, $50 more expensive than this, it just doesn't feel as good, and it's kind of sad, but it is what it is, and that's kind of where I'm going to end this comparison out, because right now it's kind of still up in the air. I mean, I'm not going to make your decision for you, but if you have an iPhone X, obviously don't upgrade. But if you had to choose between these, honestly, if it was me, I would choose the iPhone X. And that is pretty much it. If you guys have any questions or anything like that, leave it down in the comment section below. Hit that like button, that'll mean so much, but definitely hit that subscribe button. And if you're new to this channel, obviously I do a lot of comparisons and everything. I do a lot of video. Dude, I just dropped a bunch of videos. Just subscribe to the channel. Check out the links in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel. I do a lot more iOS comparisons. So on this channel, I do iOS and iPhone comparisons. On that channel, I just do iOS comparisons with different iPhones too. So kind of the same thing, but way, way more like in detail. So I'd love it if you guys could go subscribe to that channel too. But more importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace out till then.